We're back at RSAC 2026. You're watching theCUBE's live coverage. Jeetu Patel is here. He is Cisco's President and Chief Product Officer. Great to see you, my friend. Thanks so much for making time. It's just awesome having you. We've had you at this show several times. We just saw you in Barcelona. Good event.
I don't think I've been to this show without being on your show. Like, there's a couple of these shows where it's like my memory of RSA is sitting with Dave and talking to him about what's going on.
Well, we expanded the set too, give you a little bit more elbow room instead of a little round table, so thank you for making some time. We just met at Barcelona, talking about all the innovations that you guys are doing, the edge. It's really exciting. I mean, the cloud is just expanding. It's no longer a place up in some remote areas. I mean, it really is amazing. You have said that we're moving from co-pilots to autonomous agents. It's ironic at this event, the theme is power community, but all we're talking about is machines talking to machines. What does that all mean? What fundamentally changes in your view?
I think there's a profound shift happening right now, and if you really think of what we are seeing, it's not just agents had a ChatGPT-like moment with OpenClaw. And so what you've started to see happen now is, as you move from chatbots intelligently answering your questions to these agents that are going to be able to conduct jobs and tasks for you autonomously, you can't think of these agents as software tools that are going to enhance your productivity. You have to think of them as digital coworkers that are going to be augmented to your team, and they're going to be team members. And the problem, Dave, with these agents is they're kind of like teenagers. So, they're superbly and supremely intelligent, but they have no fear of consequences. They do stupid stuff all the time.
They lack wisdom.
They lack wisdom. And so, and I have a 15-year-old, and there are days when she feels like she's 45, and then there are days when I feel like she's 5. I'm like, and there's a range.
And you learn a lot from her, no doubt.
You learn a tremendous amount
impressive,
from her.
Right? But then,
hang on. On a serious note, though, what happens is what we are going to be doing is we're going to augment these agents into our teams, and we're going to need to delegate work to them. Now, the difference between delegating work and securely delegating work in a trusted way, trusted delegation, that the difference between delegation and trusted delegation is equivalent to the difference between bankruptcy and market leadership. It is literally that stark. So this is a very important conference because where we are at this juncture is we're at this point where you have to fundamentally rethink the architecture because the scale proportions and the scale volumes that these agents are going to behave at is going to be very different. For every human, let's say that you have between 10 to 100 on the lower end and 100 to 1,000 on the higher end of agents within a workplace. So that's close to 1 trillion agents. Okay, now you think about it that they're going to be working 7 by 24, which means it's 3 times the human capacity. So that's equivalent to 3 trillion other humans worth of work that got added on. And now think that they're probably at least twice as productive as us. That's 6 trillion.
At least, yeah.
Right? These are all conservative numbers when you start thinking about it. Think about the infrastructure that's going to be required to go out and support them. Think about the level of trust that needs to be put around them so that they don't actually go out and do things that could be in harm's way. Because in the chatbot era, what happened when they did something wrong? The risk of something going wrong in a chatbot is that you got the wrong answer. The risk of something going wrong in agents is they've taken the wrong action that potentially could be irreversible damage. Like I've taken out millions of dollars from your bank account and transferred it to Jeetu. It would be great for me, but bad for you. And so those are the kind of things that we need to make sure that we actually start to think about. And I think security and safety is going to be kind of really important. And one last point I'll say is, in security, we used to think about zero trust for humans as largely access control.
Yep.
With agents, you're going to have to think about zero trust as action control, which means every step of the way, you will have to make sure that you inspect every step, and if there's anything that's going wrong, you have to be able to have the ability to intercept it.
Continuous, I think you've made this point before, I think I might have heard this, we might have talked about Barcelona or maybe in your AI summit, but
We're
you've got to
spending too
have
much time together.
You've got never enough. But you've got to continuously monitor these agents and monitor their actions. You showed a chart last year at Cisco Live, and you showed the difference between a request and retrieve chatbot and the network traffic versus what happens with reasoning.
I'm grateful that you remembered that.
I paid close attention. I said, this is the most important chart of the session. And it was just amazing, because you saw this little spikes here and there, and then all of a sudden, just this wave of, color. Now we're entering the agentic era, and Jensen made this point last week. The most important chart he showed, I think, was his Pareto. He showed the three, and it's interesting because you guys are riding that curve. One of the most important things you did, I think, in terms of just getting, first of all, you got the Cisco team really focused, but then you developed a deep partnership with NVIDIA. And if you don't have a deep partnership with NVIDIA, what's the point here? They're driving the innovation and the performance, and you guys play a critical role in that value chain. But he said that you've got to figure out where you are in that Pareto, and to your earlier point, on that horizontal axis, we're talking about throughput versus, let's call it customer experience or responsiveness, really latency. Yep. If you're on the left side of the chart on that horizontal axis, it's free, freemium. If the ChatGPT makes a mistake, no big deal. On the right side, this is your new revenue model. It's a monetization model. So what does that mean? And the other thing he said was, if I hire a $500,000 engineer, software engineer.
If they don't use $250,000 of tokens.
I'm going to be really mad. If they're $5,000 token, no, they have to have a token budget and they have to use it. What does that mean generally, but specifically for security, for the business model, how the world rethinks tech?
So let me tell you my perspective on this, because I feel like the ability for an agent to have autonomous execution for long durations of time is going to be superbly important. It used to be, when deep research came out, which was like the first agent that you and I had seen in its very crude, rudimentary form, go out and conduct some research and give me back a report by compiling things from a bunch of different areas and give it to me in a neat form, but with the level of depth, right? It would take about 15, 20 minutes for deep research to come back to you in the early days to give you back a good 20-page document or something. And now, when you look at this, these agents are going to have, the duration for autonomous execution is going to be not 20 minutes, not 2 hours, maybe 2 weeks, over time 2 months, maybe 2 quarters. Imagine the kind of work that'll be able to be done when you tell an agent, you and a basket of other agents, go solve this problem and come back to me when you think you have something meaningful. One, think about the change and the shift in the workforce that's going to happen. We're going to have to think entirely differently. We are no longer going to be doers. We're going to be managers of agents, and we're going to delegate tasks and jobs to these agents, and we have to do it in a trusted way. And then they're going to go out and do it, and we're going to come back, and the bottleneck will almost become our consumption rate of what they have done. And so the next layer of review will also need to happen with the agents. But the second thing is, imagine the level of token consumption, imagine the level of infrastructure required. It's going to be of epic proportion.
Highly capable worker bee agents. And we've seen—
But not just worker bees. They might be strategic thinkers, they might be scientists over time.
Yeah, and you're going to build that up.
You're going to keep building that up over time.
Because, and we've seen glimpses of this, Jeetu. I know, personally, my backlog of really interesting projects is growing exponentially because of AI. And now I'm the bottleneck again.
Bottleneck, yeah.
So I need, like you say, more than just, I got plenty of worker bee action going on now. I need more senior and strategic agents. I've got to pyramid myself out.
But this is a very important point, which is people are worried about the jobs getting lost to AI. I think there's a couple of things that are going to happen. Humans will be divided into 2 major buckets or categories. There's going to be highly AI fluent people, dexterous in AI, the ability to go out and really understand what's going on. And then there are going to be people that are not AI fluent. I think you will have a massive shortage of AI fluency in the workforce with humans. And you'll have a massive surplus of people that are not AI fluent. And they will experience a fair amount of displacement. And so I think what we have to do as a society is get on this task of making sure that we can make more and more people fluent in AI. And if we can do that, you'll actually see high rates of development, progress, employability, all of that. But if you don't, then you'll actually see a fair amount of pain and suffering.
I'm actually quite impressed with the number of people that I talk to in our industry that are actually using OpenClaw.
Yes.
And then, of course, many people, most people outside of the industry haven't even heard of it. And to your point, there's going to be a huge asymmetry between the haves and the have-nots. So how do we close that gap?
I think the first thing you have to do is these technologies have to get simpler. Because OpenClaw, while it's easy, it's still not as easy for my late mother. If she were alive right now, she wouldn't be able to just go out and start using OpenClaw. And if she did, it'd be a disaster because she would give it all kinds of personal information that she shouldn't be giving. And so there'd be no kind of semblance of guardrails. So like we have to make sure that we get an education cycle going for everyone to get to a base level of understanding. And once you get to that base level of understanding, I think you have to make sure that there's constant level of encouragement from companies to say, you have to use these agents in order to make sure that you get your job done. Because the throughput capacity of those two groups of people I talked about, the AI fluent group is not going to be 20% more productive than the non-AI fluent group. It is going to be like 50x more productive. It'll be hard to justify. It's kind of like, it's not even, there's no analogy in the past that I can even equate to it, because imagine getting a knowledge worker today that doesn't know how to use a smartphone, doesn't know how to access the internet, doesn't know how to use Microsoft Excel, and wants a job, has never done email in their lives. So like, I think those are the kind of things that'll be huge challenges for us as society to make sure that we get 8 billion people to a base level of dexterity in AI.
I want to come back to your point about simplification.
Yeah.
You know Jensen's 5-layer cake.
Yep.
It's really infrastructure heavy. You're in infrastructure, I've been in infrastructure my whole life, but I want to come at it from top down. Will the LLMs, which are advancing so rapidly, I like to think of the layer cake as starting with the intelligence layer, that's let's call it the LLMs, and then there's this cognitive surface that is emerging that's not really fully baked yet, which harmonizes data, call it semantics, it's forming. You know, look at Palantir, what they're doing, okay, but that's within their little world. Not, you know, you need a forward deployed engineer to use Palantir. You're talking about the everyday person. So something has to evolve there to make it simpler. Will the LLMs be at least a big, of course they'll be a big part of that answer, but are they going to start to really innovate in that simplicity zone? And who will fill the other gaps? What does that look like?
I think it's not, the simplicity doesn't come from the LLMs, it comes from the agents that use the LLMs and use the models. So I think the way that you have to think about it is, what is the deployment simplicity for getting an agent activated? Mm-hmm. And how well can they be trained and coached to actually do the entirety of the job? What is the classical definition of an agent? Someone who has access to your tools. Right? That is the one difference between a chatbot and an agent.
It has the authority to act on your behalf.
It has the authority to act on your behalf, has access to tools and systems, and can go out and conduct a job almost autonomously, if not fully autonomously, and come back to you if at all there's something needed, but otherwise it'll just go out and make judgment calls. Few things to keep in mind. It has to make the right judgment calls. We have to make sure that we have trusted guardrails. We can go out and have there has to be a human accountable for an agent's behavior. So the infrastructure and the apparatus around security will completely change. Because if you think about the way that, like I said earlier, if you wanted to have zero trust, which is least privileged access for agents, it can't be only about access control, it has to be about action control. What does that mean? That means that you have to give the agent the right level of privileges just in time. It has to be just enough privilege, not overprivileged, and it has to be for just enough time. And then you have to revoke it, right? And so you get the task done, now I'm going to take away your permission. That is a whole different architecture than what was needed a classically. The other thing is the endpoint is no longer something that you can fully trust. Because you can download anything to the endpoint. Where trust gets established is where there's connectivity that's occurring. Where does connectivity happen? On the network. And so you have to make sure that that connectivity is happening on the network. And as that happens, you're monitoring these agents with round-the-clock observability through the full stack, from how are the tokens working and the GPU to get manufactured, how is the model performing, how is the app performing, how is the agent performing. That entire stack has to be observable all the time, and every new app that gets built has to be born observable.
So I feel like the first line of defense, 5, 7 years ago, even 4 or 5 years ago, was the cloud. What's the first line of defense now? Is it agents? Is there no first line of defense? Obviously you have to have layered defenses. Is it the network?
The granularity is going to be at the task level. The action that you're taking as an agent. That's going to be the area that you have to protect, and every single action has to be observable, interceptable, and applicable to dynamic guardrails that can be provided. So, because here's an example. Just because you gave an agent permission to do something doesn't mean that it should do it at bulk scale. So for example, if I give an agent permission to say, you have access rights to delete my email, right? I don't want it to delete 10,000 emails in a second. It's okay for it to delete one email that they might have processed, but I don't want it to delete 10,000 emails. So when it's starting to do something like that, knowing that something is not going right and being able to intercept, you're going to need to have an agent at agent scale that actually does that, because you cannot do it at human scale. So if there's an agent that's starting to do things that are going sideways, you need to have another agent to be able to intercept at human scale. And the transitive property that we have actually so long relied on for guardrails with humans does not work with agents, which means if you come to me for something and I'm the CFO and you're an employee in the company and you say, hey, can you give me what the earnings look like before they come out? You as a CFO say, you know what, I can't do that, right? Even though you have access to talk to me, I can't do that. And an agent, if you have access to talk to that agent and say, give me this, the agent might give it that. So you have to then be able to intercept and say, no, I can't give that to another agent. So there's a whole lot of complexity here that needs to be solved for, which I don't think we have actually fully grokked, and that's precisely the reason why we announced Defense Claw. And Defense Claw was actually piggybacking on the announcement that Jensen made at GTC.
Emo Claw.
But it was more around OpenShell. So what Jensen announced was OpenShell. What is OpenShell? OpenShell is a secure container that can run OpenClaw. What we have done is we have actually taken a bunch of services, skill scanners, MCP scanners, AI bill of materials for inventorying AI agents, model provenance, all of these services, we've open sourced them. And then what we did was we put it all under a single umbrella called Defense Claw, and that can connect with a hook into OpenShell. What's the benefit of that? Every single time an agent runs, an OpenClaw agent runs in OpenShell, you automatically have all of our security services activated against that agent. You don't have to worry about it. And that's the beauty of it. And then you can expect us to have in our platform a Defense Claw Enterprise Edition that can provide the management capability for Defense Claw, the open source edition.
So this is, if I'm in a room with you with a whiteboard, I mean obviously Cisco's got a phenomenal business, networking, collaboration, security, et cetera, but this is a whole new vector of opportunity for you.
Agent security is a hundreds of billions of dollar market. And by the way, we have no concept right now on how grave the consequences can be if you don't deploy this. And the beauty about this is Cisco is at the forefront of this. Historically, Dave, you've given me a hard time in the past saying, hey, Cisco had stopped innovating. Like 5 years ago, I remember when you met me, when you and I saw each other, you were like, Jeetu, like what are you doing? Like Cisco has stopped innovating. No one accuses us of that anymore.
True.
Right?
You're right.
We are by far and away ahead in the market. We were the only ones over here. In 7 days from the time that OpenShell came out, there was Defense Claw for OpenShell. 7 days. 100% of AI defense is written by AI. Half a dozen products by the end of the year, 26, will be written with AI. No human lines of code, and by the end of next year, 70% of all Cisco products will be written with AI, and the implication of that is, there's no such thing as a legacy company anymore.
Right.
You will either have a modernized stack or you'll be out of business. And we are refactoring our entire code base.
And Defense Clause, you said open source.
Defense Clause is completely open source.
And so,
available on GitHub today.
available on GitHub, when did you start writing code? When did the code, AI start writing code?
So we started writing modules of Defense Clause, like Skill Scanner and all of those, about 2.5 months ago or so. The day we launched it, we had 1,200 GitHub stars. Right, so which by the way, in open source, is massive. We bundled all of these pieces together. Defense Clause was actually written in 7 days. And so I just want people to process the fact that, and by the way, it's not like, oh, this is a concept kind of thing. No, this is a full scaffolding for OpenShell, for an OpenClaw agent working with security guardrails in place in 7 days.
Amazing speed. I wasn't able to see your keynote. I was doing this, but I talked to some people who saw it. But there's these unknown unknowns, and you sort of alluded to that before, and I think you talked about unmanaged risk as well. And then there's, of course, known unknowns, but it's those unknown unknowns that really we have to be careful about, isn't it?
And by the way, on that front, what needs to happen is we have a whole kind of life cycle of services that we've provided now. So we can look at every model and know how a model is performing against algorithmic red teaming attacks that we have actually done, and given a model a score, which is a leaderboard. We have an Explorer edition of AI Defense now, which allows you to, on a free of charge basis, explore AI Defense with your own data and your own models. And then what we've got is all of these other AI Defense capabilities we've put in place. But the most important thing right now that we have to think about is this notion of an agentic SOC. If agents are going to be used by adversaries to go out and create attacks on society, the only way you can combat this is at machine scale, not at human scale, which means that every SOC will be agentic. If you don't have an agentic SOC, you don't have a SOC. That's number one. Number two, once you have an agentic SOC, every alert and every signal will be evaluated. In the past, SOCs used to go out and prioritize because a SOC analyst didn't have time to go out and look at all the alerts and all the vulnerabilities and all the signals. Every alert and every signal now will be evaluated. So detection and response will happen at machine scale and speed.
I think this idea of moving from access control to action control is how you said it, and I think that's profound. And so you're extending, essentially, identity to agents.
Yes, and by the way, agent identity needs to be thought of slightly differently from just human identity.
How so? Explain that.
Because when you're thinking about an agent identity, the permissioning that you do against that identity has to be far more temporal than a human identity, and has to be far more granular. And so, like I said, it's just-in-time permissioning, just enough permissioning, and for just enough time permissioning. Just-in-time means as soon as the agent wants to do something, you have to give it permission. You can't be delayed. Just enough permissioning because you only give it permission for the scope that they're going to do something and no more. Least privileged access. Just enough time is the moment they've been done with the task, take away the permission. That's a completely different way to go out and think about the action control for an agent identity versus a human identity, where I can give you something for the term of your employment unless you've otherwise proven that you're not deserving of it. But in agents, you have to assume it the other way around. They're not deserving of it for more than the time that you need to give it to them.
Right. Well, Jeetu, you've awakened a sleeping giant. They say you can't move a steamship overnight, but you're actually doing that, and so congratulations on that. Your AI Summit was the best event of the year so far. I think it topped even GTC, which was wonderful, but it was
wow, that's big praise.
But the reason I say that is GTC was awesome, but it's, it's all NVIDIA all the time, whereas you had a much wider sort of observation space across the industry, and it was just a real pleasure to see that.
We wanted to make sure that we brought the ecosystem together to have the important conversations without just peddling products. And I will tell you that the conversations you do in these long, mid-form, it's hard to do these in 5-minute broadcast interviews, so I appreciate you taking a little bit of the time so that you can go understand the details, and congrats on all the success that you've had. Can I just give one last plug to my team?
Yeah, please do.
DJ Sampath, who runs our AI team, and people in his team, Akshay, Arjun, all of these guys that have been working tirelessly, round the clock. Matt Caulfield, who runs identity, and others. I think we need to make sure that the level of credit that they deserve for what they're building right now is, it's nothing short of extraordinary what they're doing. I get all the credit oftentimes from people like you, but literally it's those folks that deserve the credit.
Glad you mentioned that because, again, I think you've awakened Cisco's engineering culture. And so congratulations on that. You're a builder, and you inspire other builders in your organization. So thanks so much for taking some time with us. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, my friend.
All right, thank you for watching. This is Dave Vellante. We're right back. RSAC 2026. You're watching theCUBE.